research for Nielsen's on-location division. That's the group in Nielsen that focuses on media that's consumed outside the home. For our measurement, we tend to be focused on TV and video broadcasts outside the home, but for many years we've been partnering with the OAAA to do a benchmark study about the broader out-of-home industry. This series actually started in 2001, but I didn't work on that one, as an in-car study that was funded by Arbitron to look at the relationship between people driving in their cars and listening to the radio and people seeing billboards. So the audio and the video coming together to create a complete message. And then that was repeated in 2003. I worked on that one, and we just kept going down the line until you get here, which is our 2019 study. And for those of you who may not be familiar with it, I'll walk you through the purpose of the study. But just to let you know, this will be available on the OAAA website. It is free to use, so definitely we want this information to get out there, to talk about it and talk about what it means for the out-of-home industry. So I just told you about that this is a long-running study. We cover many different topics, from opportunity to be exposed to out-of-home media, recall of seeing specific types of media, and this year we actually break out 15 different out-of-home formats, and then also people's reaction to this, how they engage with it, and actions they take after seeing out-of-home advertising. So the highlights slide, I'll be going over each of these findings individually as we go through, but just to know that there are great stories here around the reach of out-of-home, the engagement, and the interaction. Also, its ability to reach young people and its ability to drive in-store traffic. So there's a lot to talk about today. I'm going to walk you through the presentation or the study as it exists, and then I'll stop and we can have a discussion and you can ask questions. So I hope you enjoy. All right, so first off, just a little background on how this study is conducted. It's an online survey with a national sample of US residents age 16 or older. So it is balanced regionally and by age and gender. The respondents for this study had to either have walked in a town, city, or downtown area, driven or ridden in a car, truck, or other private vehicle, have ridden in a public bus or a taxi, or had ridden in a commuter rail or subway. So essentially we're looking for people who were essentially outside their house within the past month. And that is and it's the vast majority of the population. So that is the focus for this study. So just keep that in mind. So the first thing I want to talk about is the travel patterns for people in the US. As I said, this study has been updated every 3 years. So I do have some data from past studies that I will reference just to give an idea of directionally of where some of these behaviors may be going. So the first thing we want to look at is what percent of the US pop 16 plus has driven or ridden in a private vehicle, has ridden in a bus, taxi, and this time around we added on-demand car service, so that would be your Ubers and Lyfts. And then finally, if they have ridden some kind of commuter rail. Now keep in mind that this is a study of the total US population. Only a few major cities actually have a commuter rail or subway. So when we're looking at these numbers for exposure, we have to think about that these would look very different if we're looking at it on an individual DMA level. So we have 87% of the population had driven or ridden in a car in the past month. This is actually down a little from what we had seen in 2016, but what we did see is we had more people that said that they had ridden on a bus, taxi, or on-demand car service. So that was 22% in 2016. It is now 30% in 2019. And I actually am from New York City and fall into that weird category of where I have not ridden in a private vehicle in a month, but I have ridden in taxis and Ubers. So I can identify, even though it seems unusual for the full US. So again, this is just an idea of how people are moving around. We also, while it's not pictured here, we have the data. 60% of the US pop said that they had walked in a downtown area. And again, we're looking for that walking because of street furniture and posters and other things that are going to be on more commercial streets within an environment. So the next thing we wanted to look at was the amount of time that people spend in their car. People spend driving. So driving or riding in a taxi or subway or commuter rail. And what we found is that 56% of the population has ridden for 2 hours or more on an average weekday. That would be Monday through Friday. And 20% have ridden for 6 hours or more on a weekday. Again, Monday through Friday. These both are up from what we saw in 2016. In 2016, we had 49% of the population having driven over 2 hours or having ridden over 2 hours, and only 14% had ridden over 6 hours. So what we're seeing here is people just commuting more. They're spending more time on the road. The next thing we're looking at is how people are driving on the weekends. And again, here we saw an increase in the amount of time that people said that they spent in vehicles on Saturdays and Sundays. So we have over a third, 37% of people that said they spent 2 hours or more in a vehicle on a Saturday, and 26% said they traveled more than 2 hours on a Sunday. Again, this is up from what we had seen 3 years ago, where only a quarter of people had driven for more than 2 hours on a Saturday, and only 14% had driven that much on a Sunday. So once again, it's not only weekdays that people say that they're spending more time traveling, this is also moving over into the weekends. So the next thing we did was just put together a little summary table for everyone to be able to take a look at. And what this summary table is showing you is the mean amount of time that people said that they spent traveling on the different days of the week. On the different days of the week. Now, this is up considerably from what we saw in 2016. So here people are saying that they're spending 22 hours traveling Monday through Friday. That's full Monday through Friday. In 2016, people were estimating it was about 16 hours during that week. Total hours spent Monday through Sunday now is over 25 hours, when in 2016 it was 19. Now, one of the biggest drivers we saw was the amount of time that people said they were driving on the weekdays. That went up an hour. So it was 3 hours and 15 minutes a few years ago, and now the estimate is almost 4.5 hours. Now, I have looked at some of this data, and there is increases across the board, but there are some small groups of people that are traveling a lot, many hours a day. So that is something to look for, why these people are traveling a lot. Are they Uber drivers and things like that we really wasn't as prevalent in 2016. We don't know. but it is driving up the average. So the median amount of time that people spent traveling is still about 2 hours from last time to this time. But because of those really heavy travelers, we're now seeing an average that's going up. But again, these averages come into consideration because this is more impressions to out-of-home advertising seen from a vehicle. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about was the distance that people said they traveled. So you have the amount of time, but the distance they were able to go. And people estimated that they had traveled 159 miles in the past week, and that 42% of them said that they had traveled over 100 miles. Now again, you have in this case where you have like a small group of people who are traveling 300 miles or more. But again, this is up from 2016. 2016, it was 135 miles, and now it's 159 miles. And when I take you through to the appendix, you're going to see the demographic breakout for different types of people and their exposure to out-of-home media. And you'll see that people who drive the most amount tend to be middle class and upper middle class. So again, the people that are contributing more to the gross impressions that are being delivered are at a higher concentration of middle class and upper middle class. So that's always just that's something that we've been seeing for several years, and is reaffirmed in this survey. So next I'm going to talk about walking in a downtown area. So again, I'm from New York City. So my life is spent walking everywhere, and where street furniture advertising is a big part of what I see every day. So we asked people, again, across the country, 60% of them said that they did some walking in a downtown or commercial area. And they estimated that they spent about 3 hours walking in a downtown area within the past week. That's up from 2 hours and 15 minutes that we saw in the previous study. So not only are people driving or riding more, they're actually walking more. They're out of the home more. And there's a lot of different reasons that we can come up with on why that's happening. Some of them are more obvious than others. Changes in media patterns have changed the way that people spend, the amount of time people spend at home versus out of home. But it's just interesting to see that both walking and riding has gone up. So next, what we're going to do is start looking at individual out-of-home formats. And this time around, we had 15 different formats that we measured. I'm going to go through each one. Some of them are new for the first time in 2019. But before I jump into the full, that thing came out a little weird. All right, so before I talk about each individual format, I just wanted to demonstrate that across all of the different media we asked about, 90% of Americans 16 plus said that they noticed at least one of those media in the past month, and 80% had noticed it in the past week. So when I was looking that up, I was like, wow, 80% in the past week. So I actually ran broadcast and cable TV viewership numbers, again, because we're Nielsen. And I saw that so this is average over the course of a year. 80.6% of the US pop watches a broadcast channel in the past 7 days, and 76.6% watched a cable that includes both premium and commercial cable in the past week. So now we can say, looking at all of the out-of-home media formats, all the different flavors, it's actually delivering a reach that's on par with broadcast and cable television. So again, people don't often think about it in that, in that context, but this is a mass medium. All right. So now we are going to, oh, everything's coming up kind of fun looking. So now we're going to start talking about some of the individual categories. Before I go into them, we decided to actually group some of the types of media together. So the first grouping we did is called billboards, and in that you have roadside bulletins, digital bulletins, and posters. And 81% of the US pop said that they saw one of those three staples of out-of-home media within the past month. You have 78% that they said saw some type of transit advertising. Now that could be anything from airports to mobile billboards and subways and buses, taxis, wrapped vehicles. But any advertising that is associated with traveling, 78% have seen that advertising in the past month. 74% have seen some type of place-based advertising. And place-based is that, is that cutout that we're, talking about that Nielsen definitely focuses on, which is media that you're consuming inside specific venues. So here we had movie theaters, shopping centers, and then also we grouped a wide variety of different places, including health clubs, office buildings, the gas pump, in order to see what % of people are being exposed to it. So across all of those place-based media locations, 74% of people had seen an ad within the past month. And then finally, you get to street furnitures and bus shelters. And again, this is where only certain markets have this type of media available. So again, you're looking at this on a total US basis. But but 50%, just looking at it from the markets that actually have a good deal of that type of advertising available, again, is just substantial reach for these media. And again, this study is available from the OAAA. You'll be able to download it, I believe, today. Today? Woohoo! Everyone, let's get giddy. So first, okay, let's look at the category of billboard advertising. 76% of people said that they saw a bulletin, so a bulletin, that traditional roadside bulletin, in the past month, and 60% had seen it within the past week. 55% had seen a digital billboard or digital poster, and 38% had seen it in the past week. And 47% of the population said that they saw a printed poster. And again, we showed examples of all of these different ad formats so that people understood what we were referring to, considering the vocabulary for some of these would be different in different parts of the country, and also just based on the background of the respondent. So if you go to the back of the entire report, you'll see the visual and know exactly what we were asking people about. So when it comes to the different billboards, it's slightly lower than what we saw in 2016, but again, there's just such a wide variety of out-of-home formats out there that overall viewership is stable or higher. People are noticing definitely these out-of-home formats, but it's a little different than what we had seen in 2016. So now we're moving on to transportation advertising. So here we're talking about public buses, we're talking about taxis, and we're talking about rails and subways. And what we have are 55% of the population having noticed an ad on the side of a bus. So again, this is different from the bus shelter. You have 31% that said that they had seen an ad on a taxi. And again, it's that classic taxi top advertising that we had shown as an example. And we had 15% of people saying that they had noticed a advertisement on a commuter rail or subway. And again, just a small portion of the population had an opportunity to see that. And the numbers are, pretty consistent from what we saw in 2016. Public buses are the same, transit is the same. Taxis are down a little bit, but again, you may have influences from how people think of taxis and Ubers and Lyfts that up until now have not traditionally had rooftop signage, though I know that some of them actually are changing. So again, you had a lot more people who had ridden taxis, buses, or on-demand cars, but I don't think as many of them had the media for them to notice and be exposed to. So it's one of the things that, as something becomes more popular, it takes a little time for the media recognition to tie up. So the next thing we have here is brand spanking new in 2019. So we measured two types of moving advertising. One would be vehicles that are wrapped. So it could be a car, it could be a van, but it has that all over wrap advertising. And the other one is more of a mobile billboard. You see them all over Vegas that are driving around usually with a fairly flat sign and driving up and down the highways. 64% of the US population had seen a wrapped car in the past month. That was a lot to me, like when I looked at it, and again, it was the first time we were measuring it, but then I really thought about it. I see wrapped vehicles all the time. And again, I live in a major city, but wrapped vehicles are becoming more and more common to the point where nearly 2/3 of the country has seen a wrapped vehicle in the past month. Also, mobile billboards. I mean, there's only a few markets that those are permitted in, but we still have over a quarter of the population that said that they saw a mobile billboard. And again, when you go into the appendix, you can see the demographic makeup of people who have seen a wrapped vehicle, who have seen a mobile billboard. You can get an idea of who these people are and how we can be marketing to them using these media. I get asked about mobile billboards and just advertising where the advertising and the person is moving at the same time, and trying to come up with a good way to try to measure exposure to that. But it's just knowing that we're starting from a standpoint where a fair number of people are exposed to the medium overall. It gives it's very encouraging about being able to measure the impressions against those vehicles in the future. Next, we have street level advertising. That's the bus shelters we were talking about, and the street kiosks. So, and again, you'll see the photos at the end of the street kiosks we were talking about, so we all know we're on the same page. And again, we had 39% of the country having seen a bus shelter ad in the past month, 37% street furniture or street kiosks. And again, this comes down to they're not in all markets, but they are still getting us a really decent reach on a national basis. And when you start looking at this on a local, you can see that these are going to be mass media in their markets. So the next thing we're looking at here are some of the place-based advertising categories. So we're looking at shopping malls, movie theaters, and airports. And the shopping malls and the movie theaters are pretty similar to what we saw in 2016. Noticing advertising at the airport actually went up. It was 10% in 2016, and now in 2019 it is 16%. So it would need to look and see, are more Americans traveling? And if so, then airport advertising becomes more of a mass medium. But again, like cinema advertising, I went to the cinema upfront in New York last week, and it's just really exciting to see the different advertising opportunities in the theaters, and to know that 31% of the population can be reached by that medium in a month. And then our shopping malls are consistent at about 41%. So next we have, these are the versions of place-based media that we grouped together, and we grouped them into two categories. One are printed signs that are in venues or at venues, and then the other are video screens. So we had 57% of the population that said that they had seen a printed sign at venues such as retail stores, health clubs, gas stations within the past month. And then when we asked, okay, the same type of venues, did you see digital signage? 45% had seen digital signage in one of these venue types in the past month. And again, as digital signage or place-based media grows, this reach that it'll have as a medium is expected to continue to grow. So next, okay, I'm good on time. Look at me. So next I want to talk about engagement with out-of-home. And if you're familiar with this study, this might look familiar to you, but this is actually not a data point that you can compare to past studies. So when we ask people who were engaged with a certain type of media, had noticed a movie theater ad, had noticed a digital billboard or a digital bulletin, we asked them, do you tend to look at the messages on that type of format all the time, most of the time, some of the time, and then we have almost never, not sure. And so normally we would show this for roadside bulletins, and it's something that we've been trending going back many years. This time around, we asked about engagement with each of the 15 media measured, and then we aggregated that data together. So when you're looking at 90% of the population that was exposed to any of the measured forms of out-of-home covered here, and 80% having noticed in the past week, you're looking at the engagement that is equivalent to that. And that engagement is that 81% said that they engage with the messages on these media at least some of the time, so some, most, or all. And you had 40% that say that they engage either all the time or most of the time. So again, when you look at how people feel about different types of advertising and what they see as disruptive and then what they see as informative, people have a good attitude towards out-of-home. And so I was really glad this year that we were able to take a deeper dive into that because it has a lot to say. So then we did the same engagement rating, but we did it for each of those categories that we discussed before. And what we found is that they all have high, similar levels of engagement. And again, you can see them broken out by some, most, and all on these charts. But billboards, your bulletins and your posters, 85% are engaged with them on some level. The second biggest category was place-based. Again, bringing movie theaters and shopping malls into it. You had 82% saying that they were engaged with the media they're seeing in those locations. You had 80% that said that they were engaging with transit advertising, again, in that wide variety of locations. And you had 75% that said that they felt engaged with street furnitures or bus shelters. And again, this is out of the people who noticed these media. So only a small portion of the country may have seen street furniture, but of those people who saw street furniture, they said that they were engaged with that messaging, at least some of the time. So again, it's looking at those attitudes and looking at, place-based, which again, that I work with closely, doing very well, and billboards still being the backbone of engagement for the industry. So next we're going to take a look at actions that people take after being exposed to an out-of-home ad. So again, first we looked at, how many people are exposed and how much time are they exposed per week. Then we had, how many people are noticing these types of formats. So that's a function of both exposure and at least somewhat level of engagement. Then we talked about, just really engaging with the media. And now we're talking about the actions that people take after they're exposed to these media. And what we saw is, again, you can read on the board, 28% of people said that they had watched a movie that they saw advertised on out-of-home media formats. 25% said they visited a restaurant that they saw in an out-of-home format. One of the key things here is both of those numbers are up compared to what they were in 2016. Visited a store was stayed roughly the same. People who want to see an event that they saw advertised actually went up. 14% of people said that they attended an event that they found out about on out-of-home media. That was only 9% in 2016. And then calling a phone number that they saw on an ad was, again, stayed similar between 2016 and 2019. Unfortunately, TV tune-ins and radio tune-ins are down. We still have, oh wait, actually, sorry. No, they're actually about the same. Sorry, yeah, they're higher. I have it inverted here. I really apologize. I have that inverted here. Oh, good news for them. Bless you, sweethearts. But yeah, I do apologize for that. It's incorrect in the study, by the way. I just have it inverted in my note. So, all right, so then even TV and out of home. So you're looking at, as far as engagement with or actions taken after seeing out of home advertising, it seems to be going up. Go ahead, sweetheart.
Yeah, visited a website.
Say that again?
How many people visited a website?
How?
Oh, she is.
Okay. So then the next grouping that we're going to look at are two other types of interactions that people could have had. One is word of mouth, talking about the advertising that they saw. And then the other is going online to do something as a result of seeing that ad. Now, word of mouth, talking about it, visiting the advertiser's social media site, recommending it to friends, even posting about it on social media, they were roughly the same in 2019 than we saw in 2016. What we saw big increases on were the number of people who said that they searched and the number of people who said that they visited a website. So now we have 33% of people that say that they have searched after looking at an out-of-home ad. That was 24% in 2016. And we have 23% saying that they have visited a website, and that was 17% in 2016. So we are seeing, again, online activity being driven by offline media. And if any of you haven't looked at the Nielsen study that we put out a couple of years ago, we've actually done 2 versions of it with the OAAA. We actually asked people about the different types of ads that they see on different types of media and whether or not they engaged in specific online activities, everything from search to posting on Twitter to going on Facebook. And we looked at the amount of activity that was generated for out-of-home advertising versus TV and radio and print. And then we indexed that against the ad spend, the CPMs. And what you found is that out-of-home, dollar for dollar, delivered more online activity compared to those other offline media. And again, we're just seeing that, now just continuing with there being activity, online activity driven from this, offline media. And then next we wanted to specifically look at smartphone activities that have been taken after, like on mobile device, that have been taken after seeing an ad. And so we asked about everything from having gone online on their mobile device to search, to having access a coupon from their phone, visitor the advertiser's website, but again, specifically from their mobile device, downloaded an app, just going down the board. All of these, with the exception of NFC and QR codes, all went up. And even the QR codes were just stable between 2016 and 2019. But if you look at it just net across the board, 66% 60% of people had engaged in at least one of those mobile activities after having seen an out-of-home ad. So again, looking at that relationship where mobile is both in-home and out-of-home, and to have out-of-home media reinforcing each other is a really interesting concept. Again, media can work with each other. In the day, radio worked with out-of-home. Mobile can work with out-of-home, and we're seeing that trending here. Next, we looked into driving in-store traffic. And what we found was 39% of people said that they had noticed a directional out-of-home advertising. Macy's on the next exit, McDonald's just around the corner. And that was exactly the same as we saw in 2016. We saw that 20% of people said that they visited a business immediately after seeing an advertising. And this is of everyone. This is not 20% of 39%. This is 20% of the US pop 16 plus, measured here, that we measured here, that immediately went to a business. Now, of those people who went to a business, 74% said that they made a purchase. So again, that's not something that we necessarily had in the last survey, but it's something that we're showing today.
Diane, I think, just to point out, I think that 20% number is really interesting vis-a-vis, the growth of all this digital online shopping and this supposed decline in brick and mortar stores. That number is higher than it was in the last survey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it was only 14% or something.
It was 16, yeah. No, it's up.
Yeah.
It's up. People are taking actions. Now, that said, actually, I'm going to go on to consumer patterns. Now, this isn't directly related to out-of-home advertising, but it's just more benchmarking people's overall consumer habits, again, just because we've been doing this series for such a long time. So first, we asked people about their in-person shopping and what time of day or what days of the week they tend to do it. And what we saw here was actually something interesting. We saw that the number of people who said that they were shopping in the morning, shopping during lunch, had gone up. The number of people who were shopping after work had gone up. It was 70%, now it's 87%. And so people were shopping across the day more as far as doing their in-person shopping, which means that it's evening out throughout the day a little more than maybe it had been. But it's the idea that at each part of the day you have that level of activity happening. Now, this is for in-person shopping. For online shopping, what we saw was again increases across the board, where we had 89% of people saying that they shop online from home, 50% at work, 46% someplace else, and 24% while commuting, while on the train, while in the taxi, while doing, going where they're going, they are shopping. And again, all of these averages are higher than what they were when we looked at it in 2016. So the places that people are shopping online, and again, with mobile, is now much broader. Okay, the next slide, we asked people what proportion of their total purchases are made online versus in-store. We should have made this a little clearer, because when you're looking at here, people were saying they're making 63% of their purchases in store and 37% online. So I went in and I looked at other Nielsen data we have around shopping. This is true for clothing, electronics, just like various like consumer items like that. If you count transactions as the gas station, buying your lunch, at lunchtime, if you take everything into consideration, it's actually still 90% of actual interactions are happening in the real world. But if you're looking at those things that people went to department stores for or malls for, that's where you're beginning to see that more and more of that is happening online. So again, having that relationship between out-of-home and mobile, out-of-home and online is going to be important going forward. So the directional was great. I saw an ad and I visited the location, but we want to keep up. I saw an ad and I went online and shopped. Alrighty, and then the last thing that we ask is, and I'm coming up on time, is just people's state of mind while they're driving, and this is more just for fun. And the one thing that I'll comment on is when we did this in 2016, people listed work over family. And for this time around, family came out. Friends were in the top 4. They weren't even in the top 4 last year. People were, talking about work, what they were doing later the day. Their finances were like the top things. Here now we have them reordered with family taking precedent. Not by a lot, but taking some precedent. So again, it's just a nice idea, window into what people are thinking. So to top it off is when I have 2 or 3 minutes for questions is there are 3 appendices in this that you're going to want to look at. So one of them is going to break out demographic information for the total U.S., also people who use different travel methods, either traveling in a private vehicle, traveling in a public vehicle, could be bus, taxi, and people who walk. Also people who have who travel a lot, medium and light, and then also people who view billboards in particular, meaning those bulletins, and then any out-of-home media. So when you look at it, you're going to be able to look at it by age, sex, income, employment, and education level, and see what those differences are in those type of travelers and consumers and viewers of out-of-home advertising. You'll also get a chance to look at the miles they travel on each weekday and per week. And then finally, you're going to get a look at their recall for each of these out-of-home media. And again, how it differs for some of the different advertising. Hold on, let me look at my note. Beautiful little note for this. So, all right, so here, I'll give you an example. So we have this, and then we also have a page that just indexes this. It makes it easier to look at. So the index for the total population would be 100. If that group is more likely to do that activity, their index will be over 100. If they're less likely, it'll be under 100. So if you look at people who use public transportation, and did they notice bus shelters, they have an index of 154%. Because these are people who are using public transportation. This is a public transportation medium. So it's fun to look at this and be able to, pick out, the groups that are going to be seeing it most often. Finally, Appendix B is going to take you through all of this, but it's also going to break out race, age, and income. And as you can imagine, and I'll go straight to the index page, people who make 100K plus, they're over-indexing for airports. They're also over-indexing for street furniture. Again, the idea of working in downtown areas.
Diane, can I just interject on that last slide? I hope everyone saw Nick Ryan's presentation today. He talked about the multiculturalism of our country. Look at the Black, Hispanic, and Asian index list. For the Hispanic column, that they over-index in every single out-of-home format evaluated. And it's the same is true for almost both of the others. So
if you
strong point for out-of-home about our ability to engage with those consumers.
Yeah, no, I just went back a few slides for time spent traveling, and you'll see that, African Americans and Hispanics are actually spending more time traveling, and so their greater exposure to out-of-home media appears to go hand in hand with that. But again, being able to look at it is interesting. And then finally, you just have all the visuals that we showed, so you can get an idea of what everything looked like. These were our wrapped vehicles looked like. And that's it. So I download it, enjoy it, And if you have any questions about it, feel free to reach out to the OAAA and, or me, Diane Williams at Nielsen. So.
And if anybody wants to go onto the website and download it right away, you go to the Proof Out of Homeworks tab on our website and then marketing research. And then from there, you go to the consumer behavior tab, and it'll be the first study listed. So again, Proof Out of Homeworks on the OAAA website, then marketing research, and then consumer behavior.
Stephen, do you keep the older studies on the site when a new one's released? Okay, so then it's all the 2019. Okay, so the 2016 one will come a bootleg.
That's called history.
Yes. So anyway, if anyone has any questions, I know that at time right now, but I'll be down there. You can come and say hello, and I'm always available to take questions and emails. All right. Thank you, everyone.